Okay, and we are live, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to start the stream here in 3 minutes. I will begin the countdown. This is a little bit bittersweet. It is the final stream from this house, the final stream from California. We love to see it, and we kind of hate to see it in a certain way, but we'll talk about it on a stream tonight. Again, if you're watching on the replay, feel free to skip ahead, but I'll see you guys all here in about 3 minutes or so. So true. I'm telling you, VinceDao nationalism, literally the future of the Republican Party. You cannot stop it. Yo, look, I'm the baby now.
This monument will never be desecrated. These heroes will never be defaced. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
John, thoughts on VinceDao nationalism?
Oh, I mean, I've been campaigning that for the better part of 3 years now. Before I even knew Vince, it actually appeared to me in a dream, and I just sort of been trying to like subtly, when they say John Doyle dog whistles, he does, but not the way they think. It's always about VinceDao nationalism. They sound like a white nationalist. No, I'm a VinceDao.
Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo as long as we are led by politicians who will not put America first. Then we can be assured that other nations will not treat America with respect, the respect that we deserve. The American people will come first once again.
Millions of Americans sincerely love Donald Trump. They love Donald Trump because no one else loved them. The country they built, the country their ancestors fought for over hundreds of years, has left them to die in their unfashionable little town, mocked and despised by the sneering half-wits with finance degrees but no actual skills who seem to run everything all of a sudden.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and we are live. Welcome to VinceDao Live, everyone. The very last live stream we will... I don't know if it actually is the last live stream ever in California, because we might actually make some content here, when I'm like back home visiting for the holidays and stuff. But overall, in general, what is the final live stream from the state of California? It is a little bit bittersweet, but I won't talk about that too much on tonight's stream because I actually do have like a whole video, kind of like a California exit video I'm going to make. So we're going to save most of the actual conversation of this of the California topic for that video. But what I will say before we begin the stream tonight is, again, the elephant in the room, the elephant at the beginning of any live chat on any live stream. It's a 714 this, 714 that. Oh, well, we got this guy over here, right? We have the Vince Dow did 714 account, and he always just spams in the chat Vince Dow did 714. Let me say that we held the 714 hearings last night, okay, with some of the viewers of this channel, and let me say again, total victory, total vindication on my part, okay? So once again, you will see, and those of you who did not trust the plan are going to be, ruthlessly just humiliated as a result of it. But if you do want to watch the 714 hearings, the 714 hearings will be out tomorrow, and I'm going to release them in full as a members-only video. So if you want to witness the 714 hearings for yourself, be sure to join our memberships. I'm actually going to make it available to all tiers of memberships because it is pretty important that all the members can witness the 714 hearings. But again, if you do want to see the 714 hearings, which will drop tomorrow, be sure to join our channel as a member right now or, in the next 24 hours. Anyways, with that being said, you guys, the final stream in the state of California. It is crazy. It is crazy to think about. I purposely busted out the old glasses. I don't even think anyone remembers these that's going to be watching this stream, but these are actually the original Vince Dow glasses. Like, this is what I wore back when I started doing politics in general. And, we are out here. Okay, we are out here. So, anyways, guys, what I wanted to talk about on stream tonight, though, again, we'll discuss California in a video that should be out maybe tomorrow or later in the week. Just talk about the news a little bit. You know what I mean? The way we've always done it. Now, first of all, real quick, I will mention the fact that everyone knows, obviously, that Andrew Cuomo announced today that he will be resigning, which was very surprising to me, right? It actually totally counter-signals the big prediction I made, which is that he's not going to resign. But it's very interesting to look at. But what I think I'd like to point out about this is that, obviously you see conservatives celebrating the Cuomo resignation as a huge victory. And it is kind of like a cultural victory in a way, right? Because they basically idolized this guy. Everyone was calling themselves a Cuomo-sexual, and he was used as a huge political weapon against Trump. And everyone was like, here's what real, COVID leadership looks like. And then what do you get, right? What do you get? He just gets thrown out of office, ironically, for the Me Too thing as well. Sam Madsen, I see, has changed, actually. He's changed his username to 714 is real, never forget, which I, really don't appreciate. But he says, will you still be doing streams in Florida? Yes, of course I will. Okay, of course I will. I don't know if we're going to be doing it immediately when I move to Florida, which is going to be by next week. I'll be in Florida. But by the time we get all set up, yes, we will be doing that. But what I think is important to point out here is a guy who obviously had the big time favor of the liberal establishment, right? He was really in their good graces. And you notice that now they've basically essentially disowned him overnight. You have to really consider the fact that, yes, while it is a victory that, the guy we don't like is out of office, you have to consider the fact that if the liberal establishment, who we have witnessed really cover up and really defend a lot of different people throughout the years, has basically turned its back on Andrew Cuomo, you have to assume that there is something more to that than meets the eye, right? It's not just that he's a sexual assault or whatever, right? I think you would have to assume that either they have it's a few things or all these things at once. Number one, they must know that the person who is replacing Andrew Cuomo, this woman, I don't even know anything about her, to be honest, but I do know if they're prepared to essentially replace Cuomo with her, you'd have to assume that she's probably a lot worse. Okay, so that's the reality we're gonna have to deal with. She's probably a lot worse, and on top of that, you have to also consider the fact that Cuomo stepping down and obviously not running for another re-election ensures that New York Democrats will have no problem in 2022. Okay, so you have to consider that there are more layers to this than which meet the eye. You have to also really maybe consider the fact that it's like, if the establishment was willing to just toss him out like this, right? What's really going on behind the scenes there? Is it really necessarily the great conservative victory that we seem to think that it is? And what I will say about the whole thing is that, I don't like Andrew Cuomo. really think it's a meme and very funny that the guy is just ousted out of office the way he is. But I think it's also important to consider that there's probably a little bit more to this. And I think you'd have to assume that the political establishment essentially has a goal with this, right? Whether it's to ensure, and it's what's also working out well for someone like Kamala Harris. And we got a $1 super chat from Matt Gagnon. Thank you very much. You'd have to also maybe probably consider the fact that it's like, well, how does someone like Kamala Harris essentially feel about this, right? And I think you know the answer to that, because obviously, if Biden doesn't run again in 2024, or even if, Biden does run again, and then you're talking about 2028, right? I think the top three contenders essentially for, the next Democratic nomination were obviously Kamala Harris, Andrew Cuomo, and Gavin Newsom, right? And it's very interesting how you're seeing the dominoes essentially fall on this. You have Kamala, who is someone that I suppose the liberal establishment is generally a pretty big fan of. Her two biggest potentially next political threats to the presidency have just been wiped out, essentially, right? Cuomo obviously is gone. Newsom, I would say, even if he does survive the recall, that even if it's just close, which I almost guarantee it's going to be pretty close, it's just not going to be a good look for him. I think it's still going to be pretty discrediting that he faced a recall and almost lost it to begin with. So, you're literally looking at this 714. I'm not going to acknowledge that. I'm going to acknowledge him as Sam Madsen, but he says they're still mad at Cuomo because he helped Republicans control the New York State Senate for his first 8 years. I don't know much about that, but perhaps that is the case. Perhaps that is the case. Or perhaps, there has to be something more to this. There has to be something more to this. And, you look at the person who's replacing him, it's like, yeah, I guess she was endorsed by the NRA like 10 years ago or something, but, wasn't Kirsten Gillibrand the same? It's just really not something that, I trust. And to be honest, I think New York's going to be a lot worse, but because it's not Andrew Cuomo, I don't think she'll have any problem winning re-election in 2022. So that's actually kind of a black pill in a way. Anyways, guys, with that being said, let's actually get to the main topic I wanted to discuss on the stream, which is, of course, you have Tucker Carlson. It was actually last week. I think he's probably back home by now. But I really felt that this was important to talk about. Took a trip to Hungary. And it's very interesting. The absolute meltdown that we saw from not just the political left, but also a lot of people on the establishment right. They went insane that Tucker visits this tiny little country in Central Europe and interviews. I don't even know how does their system work. Is it the president or prime minister? I just blanked out on that. I don't even know. But he has his visit to Hungary, who, of course, as we all know, is led by Viktor Orban, who is someone who really, quite frankly, I would say, forms a very strong model for what we could see from an effective right wing here in the United States. Right? This guy's like a nationalist. He's pro-family, pro-Christianity, right? And he's really anti-mass immigration, right? So he really is the model for what we could really look like a lot. And of course you saw, I'm sure you all remember, the absolute demonization of him, right? The absolute, like the absolute Viktor Orban derangement syndrome that you see. And I'd really contest that the real reason you're seeing a lot of this is because I think it's not even just that they think it's like easy cannon fodder or it's like bad optics, let's attack Tucker. The reason you're really seeing all the way they are treating this trip, Viktor Orban, all this stuff, is, I would say, due to the fact that in Viktor Orban really exists a model for an effective conservative movement here in the United States, right? And we'll get into that in a little bit. But quite frankly, what I will say is that that's the real reason they're I would say they're just absolutely melting down about this, because obviously our enemies essentially want, and not just our enemies, the political establishment as well, of the conservative establishment, want our movement to exist purely as controlled opposition, as we have for many years now. And in Viktor Orban, you see someone who is willing to wield power, willing to stand for families, willing to stand for God, willing to protect his current population, right? And actually has some type of insight for demographics when it comes to immigration, and also increasing his own native birth rates, right? In that, you see something that, if was adopted by the American right, would essentially make conservatives actually effective in America. And Noah says, I've been watching Doyle's APS speech on repeat for weeks. For a while, I thought you were 16. How old are you actually? I am 18. I used to be 16 at one point. So I don't know if you've been watching my content for a while. Maybe you've just always thought I've been 16, but you know, I am 18. But so you're going to see that slandering, because ultimately, but this is the thing. This is the reason they're not going to win on this issue, is because Tucker Carlson is someone, and I know, like, people, you know, not always happy with him, but I will say about Tucker is that he has the ability to essentially mainstream or platform quite literally anything in the conservative movement, because he's just so powerful and he's so influential that what he says goes when it comes to the mainstream. And you may have noticed this, like, at points throughout kind of his career in recent years, you'll notice that there might be something, and you notice that this really occurred with the ADL thing. I noticed this. You know, most conservatives were kind of scared to touch a certain topic. And then what happens? Tucker just comes out and he says it. And then what happens? You see a lot of mainstream conservatives who are initially coy about it kind of follow after him. And of course, as we know, the primary audience of cable news is older people. What you also see is boomers and stuff essentially get on board with whatever Tucker is saying. He has that power, right? He's essentially, I would say, post-Trump, basically and arguably the main thought leader of conservatism, essentially, right? He's really the people that kind of people follow for those ideas. And consider the strategy, consider the effect of Tucker giving a platform to Viktor Orban and really introducing a lot of ideas of the European right, not just into the conservative movement, not just a niche circle of the conservative movement, but of the conservative mainstream. Consider what the effects of that will be, right? You don't know how many boomers, right? I just saw around who, because Tucker did it, and because Tucker has that power to do that, basically adopting the ideas of the European right, basically saying they love Viktor Orban, they think he's a great leader, and they think that what do they say? They say they want someone like Viktor Orban here in America, right? I think we have to consider the strategy of this. Literally just trust the plan, okay? Because what you're going to see as a result of this is those sort of nationalist, you know, pro-family, pro-God, anti-mass immigration ideas of the European right are basically going to trickle into American conservatism as a result of this. It's going to be a slow process, but again, remember that Tucker normalized it. And because Tucker has the ability to basically normalize anything, what you're going to see in the fallout of this is a lot of mainstream conservative figures, right? Not necessarily people that, like, the based populist Zoomers already kind of follow and understand, but mainstream conservative figures that, you know, generally have a lot different of an audience and a lot different of a message. They're probably just going to get on board with this because, again, that is Tucker's power. So trust the plan, and really, I would say consider the effects of this. It's going to be great. But what I did want to react to on stream tonight is actually the interview of Tucker with Orban, because I found it to be pretty interesting. And I kind of wanted to just go along with this and give my thoughts on it. And obviously, for people who haven't seen this for themselves, you know, I do want you to essentially see this, because it is very interesting. You know, though, just pay attention to the way this guy talks, right? And notice that, you know, we have had some rhetoric like this from the right in America, right? Especially during 2016, we had a lot of it. But obviously, we know the drill. Since 2016, you know, the conservative establishment has basically tried to re-co-opt the movement back from Trump, back from the original Trump, I should say. But watch, like I said, trust the plan, because I think now that Tucker has given a platform to this, you're probably going to see eventually, if we push hard enough, you're going to see this type of rhetoric return
Good evening and welcome
the American right. So let's take a look at this, you guys.
to Tucker Carlson tonight. Of the nearly 200 different countries on the face of the earth, precisely one of them has an elected leader who publicly identifies as a Western-style conservative. His name is Viktor Orban. He's the Prime Minister of Hungary. Hungary is a small country in the middle of Central Europe. It has no navy. It has no nuclear weapons. Its GDP is smaller
Shout out
than
to
New York
Goat
State's.
joining the
So
membership.
you wouldn't
We love
think
to see
leaders
it. Thank
in
you very
Washington
much.
would pay a lot of attention to Hungary. but they do obsessively. By rejecting the tenets of neoliberalism, Viktor Orban has personally offended them and enraged them. What does Viktor Orban believe? Just a few years ago, his views would have seemed moderate and conventional. He thinks families are more important than banks. He believes countries need borders. For saying these things out loud, Orban has been vilified. Left-wing NGOs have denounced him as a fascist, a destroyer of democracy. Last fall, Joe Biden suggested he's a totalitarian dictator. Official Washington despises Viktor Orban so thoroughly that many, including neocons in and around the State Department.
Notice the kind of what they do with that too, because I think if you ever notice this in American media, right? Whenever American media essentially declares, and I would say there's still a lot of truth to this, whenever American media essentially declares another foreign leader a dictator, Americans tend to just believe it, right? They tend to just think, oh yeah, well, he must be on par with, the USSR or Germany or whatever, right? But and historically that basically was the case, right? Historically, most of the people that are sort of media and stuff has labeled to be authoritarian or dictators, they were. But you look today, right? And we still do this. Every foreign leader that people don't like, we declare dictator, and nobody really, basically everyone goes along with it, whether it's Nicolas Maduro, Xi Jinping, right? They even do it with like Vladimir Putin. But that's an American habit. It's an American habit and it's partially because we basically have this vision in America that we are free and everyone else sucks, right? It's just a view of American exceptionalism. Because of that, we assume if someone tells you, oh, XYZ foreign leader or whatever is a dictator, and is a one-party state there, Americans tend to just believe it. They tend to just go along because it is the American perception that we are so free and everywhere around the world is basically, the Soviet Union. But you look at the utter state of the current American regime, you look at what we're dealing with in America, you look at what the media and just the regime in general kind of spreads as propaganda in our own country, I really think it's time to reconsider those things, right? And don't get me wrong, I think most of the people that we kind of say are dictators basically are. But I think you're going to increasingly see a sizable new number of world leaders that are totally legitimate, that are elected legitimately. And while they may have some corruption to them, is really no different than the corruption in America. But will be labeled dictators, will be labeled totalitarian fascists like, Viktor Orban, simply because the ideas in their system of governance is a threat to the global neoliberal establishment regime, right? But pay attention to that, pay attention to the optics of that essentially by their side. Because it, like I said, it's such an American habit to just accept, hey, other foreign leaders a dictator, that must be the case because we're free and most of the rest of the world sucks. So I believe it. Sure, Viktor Orban must be a dictator. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to the way they weaponize that. And I would say, really start questioning those narratives, especially, you guys probably saw the infamous tweet on the subject, basically saying, in Hungary, there's a one-party state and, the 90% of the media is controlled by one party and elections are, fortified, this and that. And really kind of ask yourself, should we still be buying this game from our own regime? It's just not the case, so.
Are backing the open anti-Semites who are running against him in next April's elections in Hungary. We've watched all of this from the United States, and we've wondered if what we've heard could be true. So this week, we came to Hungary to see for ourselves. We sat down with Orban for a couple of long conversations, including one this morning. In a moment, we'll show you some of that, and you can make up your own mind about it. But first, a word about Hungary. Even if you understand that the American news media lie, it is always bewildering to see the extent of their dishonesty. Nothing prepares you for it. We've read many times how repressive Hungary is. Freedom House, an NGO in Washington that's funded almost exclusively by the U.S. government, describes Hungary as much less free than South Africa, with fewer civil liberties. That's not just wrong, it's insane. In fact, if you live in the United States, it is bitter to see the contrast between, say, Budapest and New York City.
But again, notice it, a lot of America. This is what I just pointed out. and it's very sinister. A lot of Americans typically don't really trust everything the media says. But like I said, one thing that they do tend to trust, because it's just historically been something we've all gone along with because of that view of American freedom versus the rest of the world authoritarianism. Again, historically, it has basically been something that we've always accepted, right? That if the media basically declares someone else a dictator, they must be, right? They're a dictator, right? Because we have this view that most of the rest of the world is just authoritarian and we're so free and stuff like that. It's very sinister, and it's going to be very hard to wake up Americans from that, because while with most other things, we don't really trust the media, but a lot of times when it comes to foreign affairs and it's like, oh, they're a dictator, usually most Americans are just like, yeah, sure, right? They just go along with it. It's going to be very hard to wake up from that. But at least the right can begin to kind of see through that, right?
You decided to loudly and publicly attack Joe Biden's policies, his policies on immigration or COVID or transgender athletes. If you kept talking like that, you would likely be silenced by Joe Biden's allies in Silicon Valley. If you kept it up, you might very well have to hire armed bodyguards. That's common in the U.S. Ask around. But it's unknown in Hungary. Opposition figures here don't worry that they will be hurt for their opinions. Neither, by the way, does the prime minister. Orban regularly drives himself with no security. So who's freer? In what country are you more likely to lose your job for disagreeing with the ruling class's orthodoxy?
So true.
The answer is pretty obvious, though. If you're an American, it is painful to admit it. As
so true.
With that, here's Viktor Orban. His accent's pretty thick, but his English is precise. He's worth hearing. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much. So in 2015, hundreds of thousands of migrants appear on your southern border. They appear all over Europe. They stream into Germany. The rest of the EU says, welcome, please come. We can handle it. We're strong enough. Hungary stands alone in saying no. Why? Why did you take a different position on migration from other European countries?
That was the only reasonable behavior. If somebody, without getting any permission on behalf of the Hungarian state, cross your border, you have to defend your country and to say, guys, stop. And if you would like to cross or you would like to come, there's a legal procedure. We have to do it. But you can't cross, without any kind of limitation and permission and any contribution and control of the Hungarian state. It's dangerous. You have to defend your people against any danger.
And you think you have a right to do that?
Of course. It's coming from the God, the nature, so all arguments with us. Because this is our country, this is our population, this is our history, this is our language, so we have to do that.
Notice how insanely based that statement is, right? And again, it is something that is common sense. It is something that you should hear everyone on the American right say in America, right? We have the right to protect our borders, this and that. But notice the argument he essentially made for it. It is not, he goes beyond that, right? He doesn't just say, well, my immigration policy is justified because every country has the right to control its borders, don't you know? He goes as far as to make the argument that, what did he say? He said, the idea of the nation state, which properly understood is basically just sort of this collective community of people, is proven right by, what did he say? It was like God, nature, like this and that, right? So first of all, you have that kind of inherently conservative recognition of natural hierarchy. And then what does he said? He actually makes an appeal to culture, language, and historic population, right? Which is something that, with exception of just a few, and I know this is something Tucker in the past, like 2018, 2019, used to talk about a little bit. This is something that the American right usually is pretty scared to say, right? But like I said, the platforming of the European right and their sort of style of thinking into pushing into the conservative mainstream, you're going to start to see that change, which I think that's why this is a bit of a white pill to point out. So,
of course, if you are in trouble and there is nobody closer to you than the Hungarians, you have to be helpful. But you can't say simply that, okay, it's a nice country. I would like to come here and to live here because it's a nicer life. This is not a human right to come here. No way, because it's our land.
And also point that out. So what is usually the conservative Inc. essentially stance on immigration? It's like, well, we support the idea of right people coming over here for opportunity because they want to live a better life, this and that. And it's like, yeah, okay, fine. But is that really how we should be viewing our nation? How we should be viewing our home, right? Essentially as an economic zone to be looted by a bunch of people from around the world for opportunity. That's how Americans view, like both sides of the American establishment view the immigration system, right? It is and I don't like the whole, opportunity for these other people. What it essentially is or like in that positive sense, what it essentially is an opportunity for, like I said, a bunch of people from around the world to loot the economic zone that is America, right? And the American political establishment only sees America as an economic zone. They only see it for the markets that it can serve, for the GDP, right? That's it. That's all they see America is. And obviously, now you see why it is a threat for a world leader who basically says, no, this is not my view of what my country is, right? There is such a thing as the Hungarian people. This is a nation. This is our home. This is more than an economic zone for the rest of the world. Notice how threatened they get. First of all, they're trying to get the guy out of power there, right? The American regime is trying to get Viktor Orban out of power there. All right, don't be surprised if you see the CIA, do this and that over in that country, but especially when his ideas start to get platformed in America, it's total war from their end. So, Red Eagle sends me, okay, very funny. He sends me $7.14 as a super chat, and he says Vance James did 714. I deny that 714 ever occurred because it didn't. But if it did, it would be likely that Vance James or what's the other guy's name? Octavius, Jacob Zhang. It's very likely that they would have been behind something like that. So that is true. I will grant that. Okay. Let us continue here.
It's a nation, it's a community, families, history, tradition, language.
Saying what you just said, which I think will seem obvious to a lot of our viewers, was very offensive to a lot of countries in Western Europe, to their leaders.
Because many European countries decided to open a new chapter of their own history of the nation. They call it New Society, which is a post-Christian, post-national societies. They believe firmly that if different communities, even huge number of, let's say,
I get jealous. Post-Christian, post-national society, right? Sound familiar? Does that sound familiar to you? It should, because that's exactly what describes the current state of America. But you never hear Republicans freaking say this. I mean, yeah, back in 2016, Trump kind of got at this, right? And he's a little bit less articulate, but he kind of hit on those points. But ever since then, we've just not seen this from any Republican in this country, essentially, I don't know. Maybe you occasionally get it from a small handful of really solid ones that really aren't of all that big of power, but it's very sad. It's very sad, But like I said, stay a little bit optimistic, because the fact that this guy is now kind of, because of Tucker, and this is because of Tucker, and that's it. Now that this is kind of a guy that the conservative mainstream kind of actually is looking to for ideas, trust the plan. Trust the plan. You're gonna see a lot come out of this, I think. Over the long term, right? It's not going to be overnight, but over the long term, what this is doing for the Overton window,
Muslim communities,
is fantastic.
And the original inhabitant, let's say, Christian communities are mixed up. The outcome of this will be good. There is no answer whether it will be good or bad, but I think it's very risky. And the chance that it will be not good, but it will be very bad is obvious.
It's true.
And each nation has the right to take this risk or to reject this risk. We Hungarians decided not to take that risk, to mix up our society. That's the reason why they attack Hungary so harshly, and that's the reason why my personal reputation is very bad. I'm treated like the black sheep of the European Union personally, and sometimes Hungary as well, unfortunately.
So it has been...
Again, pay attention to the contrast. So he's talking about the migrant issue, essentially, which, is really, I would say, not very different at all from the border crisis in America, right? It is essentially the same thing. It is kind of the European version of the problem we have here. So pay attention to how Viktor Orban talks about migrants and migration versus how American Republicans talk about it, right? What do American Republicans do? Oh, it's a humanitarian crisis. Look at the way all the kids are on this treacherous journey, this and that, right? Never with any consideration for, actually like Americans or, what it's doing to the American population. It's like, but they're, and what else do? They say, they're bringing a bunch of the cope virus over, right? Which is, okay, true. But that's essentially all they say about it. The rhetoric and I talked about this in the video the other last week, the rhetoric that you get from Republicans on the border, on migration is just so weak, right? It is so weak. They try to sound so essentially like compassionate as possible. Meanwhile, what are you getting from Viktor Orban? It's just very strong. It's like he's just saying exactly what needs to be said, and that's it. It's like, we have a duty to protect our current population and kind of keep alive our current population, and we have the duty to control our borders and this and that, right? Like that's all he's saying, and it's not even a crazy statement what he just said. It's not really like he's sounding the based alarm by 100, but it is in comparison to what you hear from most American Republicans and frankly most American conservatives, right? So it's very interesting. Imagine, and the second we get American Republicans to start talking like this, for instance, just about the issue of immigration or of migration, whatever, it's gonna be a different ballgame, and we'll start to look like an effective movement, which is not what they want. That's why they're going to slander this guy as much as possible.
Since Angela Merkel made the decision to let many hundreds of thousands of migrants into her country, millions, non-German speakers, mostly Muslim. What have the effects been in Germany?
Diplomacy is
requires
some well behavior, but it was their decision. They took the risk, and now they got what they have deserved. That's their life. I would not like to make any categories to describe what was the outcome of their decision. I only insist on that the Hungarians has the right to make our own choice.
You first became famous in the late 80s as a student, as one of the leaders against Soviet occupation of Hungary. And you were a hero to many in the United States. And at the time, during the Cold War, we paid close attention to Hungary. I think the US government was on your side. You were on the side of the US government. So
the irony.
30 years later, Joe Biden, while running for president last year on ABC News, suggested that you were, and I'm quoting, a totalitarian thug.
You see what's happening in everything from Belarus to Poland to Hungary, and the rise of totalitarian regimes in the world, and as well as this president embraces all the thugs in the world.
Is that bewildering for you to see the change, and how do you respond to that characterization?
So first of all, the reaction of that kind of opinion here in Hungary is always not very polite, but we think, who is that guy to say that? Then we say, okay, he is the president of the United States, so we should take it seriously. But anyway, somebody who does not speak our language has a very limited knowledge on Hungary, even in the recent several decades of our life. Don't understanding us, obviously. Having an opinion like that, it's by itself, it's a personal insult for all the Hungarians. But because he is the president of the United States, we have to be very modest. We have to be very respectful, and we have to make a lot of things to clarify that what he is doing is rather a fake. We try to do that in a polite way because we respect the Americans. We respect the American democracy, American culture. So we would not like to destroy our relationship because the bilateral relationship with the Americans is basically very good. We are cooperating well on the field of defense as NATO allies. Economic cooperation is excellent. You are a big investor here. Trade is going very well. Your businessman is finding a lot of possibilities here. So everything is fine, except the politics when the liberals are in government in Washington. That's the problem. So we have to manage that because the American-Hungarian good relationship is a value, even if the Americans don't perceive today it as it was previously. So we have to save what we can save out of it.
But it's a little strange. I don't think Joe Biden has ever referred to Xi Jinping, for example, who has murdered many of his political opponents famously, as a totalitarian thug. Why would he single you out? And not just you, by the way, the Polish government as well.
The problem is the success. So it's a real challenge for the liberal thinkers that what is going on in Central Europe, Poland and in Hungary as well. In Hungary, more outspoken probably. Speaking probably too much anyway on our intentions. So what is going on here is building up a society which is very successful economically, politically, culturally, even in demography, we have some success, family policy. So what you can see here could be described as a success story. But
there you go. Pay attention to that, right? The way they kind of structure their society over there is very focused on birth and on family, right? Just something very interesting to take a look at. So,
but the fundamentals of this success are totally different than it is wished and run and created by many other Western countries.
See, most of the West in general is just kind of having a declining subpar, birth rate, right? Most of the solution of most Western countries has been just open the borders. And it's not just the United States. I mean, obviously the United States already does that, but Germany, all these European countries, that's kind of the solution. Open the borders, we have our younger workforce is declining, just flood the gates. And Hungary took a very different approach to this problem, right? They have, kind of like a low birth rate. And instead, what they did was say, we're not going to just open the borders to a bunch of people. What we're instead going to do is try to incentivize birth, right? Incentivize having children. And so Hungary's had these basically stimuluses for having children. And, their birth rate is still not where it needs to be, but it's actually surpassed what most statisticians thought it was going to be at the time they announced this policy. So pay attention to that. And you really have to consider, is that something we should be looking at in America? Yes, obviously it is. They don't want you to, which is exactly why they're going to slander this. They're going to slander this guy as a dictator, fascist, whatever. But pay attention to that. Very interesting, right?
So the Western liberals cannot accept that inside the Western civilization, there's a conservative national alternative, which is more successful at the everyday life, at the level of than the liberal ones. That's the reason why they criticize us. They are fighting for themselves, not against us. But we are an example that somebody or a country which is based on traditional values, on national identity, based on tradition of Christianity, could be successful or sometimes even more successful than a leftist liberal government.
It's interesting.
I swear. And by the way, I don't think the European right is perfect. Obviously, there are things that, we disagree with them on. And I think the American right is superior, whether it's the issue of guns or, like sometimes lockdown, stuff like that. Right. But what I would do to, hear American Republicans speak like this, it's just pleasing to see, right? Well, I shouldn't say it's pleasing to see. I should say it's the opposite of that to see, And this is exactly. I mean, this just basically is exactly, the talking points that kind of our side of the aisle parrots. But we're always depressed because we don't see this from our politicians. But like I said, now that this world leader is basically becoming someone that the American right is going to become a fan of, right? And now it's no longer like Boris Johnson or whoever, right? And these crappy, it's going to be this guy. Keep in mind, I think, what you're going to kind of see follow and trail as a result of that.
As an American to see this. So the American media, the Biden administration, the State Department is opposed to you because they say that you're a totalitarian thug. Your opponents are a coalition of former communists and anti-Semites. Is it strange to see the American left rooting for a coalition that includes anti-Semites?
Yeah, I let's say if you would have asked me several years ago whether could it happen that the ex-communist political forces and the anti-Semite right is forming a coalition and running together at the election against a pro-Israeli and pro-American, pro-NATO, Western-oriented government as we are, my answer would have been no, it's impossible. But now the international communities accept it. So I understand that here in Hungary, the political
That's a weird coalition against him. It's a really weird coalition against him. It's interesting.
parties would like to get the power as soon as they can. Therefore, they try to make a broad coalition against the ruling government. Okay. But to be accepted that, by the international community so easily, I'm surprised. Especially the behavior in America is totally new experience for me.
It does seem like Hungary is moving in a completely different direction from the rest of the continent, from the rest of the Western world. I mean, do you think that 20 years from now, that will be an unbridgeable divide? I mean, where does that lead?
Let's describe how I see it. What I see that in the Central European countries, the countries suffered the most because of the Soviet occupation and communist dictatorship. So in these countries, my approach, or the Hungarian approach, is very popular. Probably we have a majority in all of that societies, not only in Poland and Hungary. They are more moderate. I mean,
can I just point out really quick the irony behind that, right? One of the big arguments you heard about Hungary from American liberals, what was it? It was, but the GDP, right? That was literally what they were saying about this. They're like, oh, but you're a fan of the way Hungary does things? Don't you know their GDP is below par or whatever? Which I think is very interesting, because not to be like liberal hypocrisy, but it is true that geopolitically, it has long been a talking point of American liberals that, excuse the current state of East Germany, please. The reason why East Germany is so much economically stagnant behind West Germany is because they're still feeling the effects of communism, right? They're still feeling the effects of the Soviet Union, okay? But then the same people turn around and say, Hungary's GDP, this sucks, haha, like, you know what I mean? And what is Hungary, right? A former Soviet state, just in the same way East Germany was. Interesting, right? Interesting. It's a really stupid argument, I think, to begin with. Countries, the real health of a society is not measured by the GDP or your ability to subscribe to as many OnlyFans as you're possible and you go to Walmart at 11 o'clock and, buy a bunch of soda, right? I think there are more spiritual and cultural things that you can measure the health of a society by. But on that same point, let me point out the other side of this, which is that, you see from the establishment right, sort of the same demonization of Hungary that you're seeing from most of the left. Okay, well, also keep in mind, what is most often the kind of normie conservative talking point when it comes to something like Vietnamese Americans or Cuban Americans, right? It's like they fled communism, right? They used to live under communist governments, and now that's why they're so based, and that's why they get it, and that's why they know what they're doing, and they know what they're talking about. That's why they're voting in the way that they are and support the politics that they do, because they fled communism, right? Yeah? And notice that Eastern Europe, most of these countries that used to be under, the Soviet bloc, used to be part of the Soviet Union. Okay, if you're going to say that about, communist refugees and communist immigrants from communist countries, right? Keep in mind, hey, okay, if you want to go with that, hey, people who used to live under communism know what they're talking about. Look at the way that most Eastern European countries run their stuff. It's no accident that countries like Poland and Hungary, right, former Soviet satellite states should I mention Russia? Russia, right? Are adopting Russia itself too. Look at Putin, are adopting sort of this was more like authoritarian right-wing nationalist policy in politics. Notice that, right? You want to keep that in mind. But of course, the conservative establishment will reject that, right? Which is, I don't want to say it's hypocrisy because that's very generic, but it is true. It is just pure hypocrisy, because you're always talking about communism, the Vietnamese immigrants, the Soviet immigrants, this and that, and you're like, their opinions matter more, but the opinions of the populace and the opinions of sort of the political situation of formerly communist countries that used to be part of the Soviet Union, that doesn't matter to you. You reject that. What's up with that? Look at Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban was a rabid anti-communist. He was the guy who, like Tucker mentions in this interview, became famous for protesting the Soviet occupation of Hungary. Notice what his politics are now as a result of that. You know? But anyways.
The others are more moderate,
you know.
but if you understand what they are doing, what are the fundamentals and their motivations, is basically belonging to the same political family anyway.
Yes.
On the Western society, there is a lot of people, millions and millions of people, who disagree the direction of the policy taken at this moment, which is against the family or not respecting the families, which is more based on migration, which is more open society, which is more welfare, and so on and so on. So I don't say that the political competition is over in the Western European societies. So I see chances, and the key country is Italy at this moment, where the fight and the competition is very open. So I can see chances in the Western countries also that they are able to change their policy from liberal to conservative, or from liberal leftist to Christian Democrats. The chance is there, but we are not internationally well organized. So the forthcoming years are really exciting.
I've noticed in the last few nights in Budapest, I've run into a number of Americans who have come here because they want to be around people who agree with them, who agree with you. Do you see Budapest as a kind of capital of this kind of thinking?
The capital of that kind of thinking, or one of the capitals, because the other Central European countries are also very competitive and producing very nice ideas and organizing that kind of communities of conservative and Christian Democrats thinkers as we do. We cooperate with that countries, so that kind of networks are getting closer to each other. It's getting a real, more and more real Central European network. But not only thinkers. Ordinary citizens, average citizens are moving to Central European countries. It's not too dynamic at this moment, but the signs are clear. Many Christian families and conservative families who think that Western Europe is not secure enough, the future is unstable, the public security is not provided, and the ideological direction of the countries, or the basic values of the countries built on, is changing not to their taste or their intention. They are looking for other places. So if you go to the Hungarian countryside, you can find West European families who move to Hungary. First to have the second house, because inside European Union we have a free movement. So first to have second house and then spending more and more time here. So we can't exclude the future of the European history when there will be a new migration from west to the east.
Within Europe.
The Christians and the conservatives try to find a better home. We can't exclude that.
So up until very recently, Hungary, which is a small nation, 10 million people, had two big nuclear-armed allies, the United States and Israel. You were probably Netanyahu's closest ally in Europe. You were close to Donald Trump. Both of them are gone. Where does that leave you?
We are not very much fortunate in the recent years, because Donald Trump was a great friend of Hungary. He was very much supportive to us.
Base check?
Not just personally, but politically also. So there was a good friendship between the two countries also. And, first America first, is a very positive message here in Central Europe. Because it means if for Donald Trump, America first, for us, Hungary could be first as well. And let's cooperate on that basis.
Right.
So that was a very good foreign policy, very effective, and we cooperated very well. The same with Bibi, with Netanyahu, who was a good friend of the Hungarians. And when he was in power, he always invested a lot of energy to have a good relation with the Central European countries. We respect it very much. But he lost also. So the Hungarian conservative Christian, Judeo-Christian democratic thinking lost to major international supporter. And the opponents came into power. So this is a totally new circumstance around Hungary. For me as a politician, it's a strong challenge, how to handle it.
You've got an election coming up in April. Are you worried that there will be international interference in your election in Hungary?
Yes,
that
indeed.
will happen.
So true.
We are not worried of that. We are prepared for that.
It's so funny. MFers always like, well, Russia in the 2016 election, is so bad. I can't believe they did that. Let me just say that it is true, historically at least. Okay, I don't know what's going on nowadays, so I don't know if we've changed. Historically, it is true that the United States interferes in a whole lot of foreign elections. So that's all I'm going to say on that topic. So
obviously, the international left will do everything what they can do, probably even more, to change the government here in Hungary. We are aware of that, and we are prepared for that, how to take the fight and fight back.
When the president of the United States describes you as a totalitarian thug, which is a very serious thing to say about somebody, I would note. I mean, that suggests that, why wouldn't the Biden State Department work to prevent you from being reelected?
I think sooner or later, the Americans will realize that issues in Hungary must be decided by the Hungarians. And it's better even for the leftist liberal government in the United States to have a good partner, which is a conservative Christian democratic supported.
Can I say on that topic? So, obviously, I think the concept of self-determination as it comes to foreign policy is kind of wounded into the American ethos, right? At least the traditional one, because, we all know the story of how America was founded, and we know it to be the case that, there's a reason why historically, and obviously America's had some kind of like mini colonial ventures and stuff, but historically, for most of our history, it's been our big foreign policy that we mainly want self-determination, and we kind of want that sense of political nationalism for all these different nations, right? And so I would say to these people that, the idea of letting other nations decide how they want to do their own thing, is inherently kind of American, and it is kind of inherently patriotic, and it's something that appeals to kind of traditional Americanism. But of course, that's not really even the country we live in anymore, right? We live in the globalist American empire, which will ultimately, it seeks to spread neoliberalism to every corner of the globe, But I would say to people who try to appeal to patriotism when it comes to overthrowing dictators or whatever it is, that I really wouldn't say that is patriotic at all, because I don't think it's the traditional American stance to call for freedom everywhere or our way of life everywhere. It's more the American stance to say we want self-determination, right? The American colonists wanted self-determination, and that's the same thing we want for most of the world. We want the system of government that they see fit and that population sees fit and is fit to govern that population. We want to see that implemented, not democracy, not whatever it is that, is going on in the GAE, but the system that works for them, right? And we talked about this in the video about Afghanistan and, the Taliban and all this, but it's a point I wanted to bring up.
Long-term by the people, Hungarian people. It's better to have that than a government which is supported by America and take the position but losing after several months and creating destabilization and uncertainty. So not loved but stable partner is better than the uncertain new one. That I hope the Americans will understand that.
No wonder they don't want you to hear what he says. You don't have to watch your country collapse. You don't have to have leaders who hate the population or divide their own people against each other, who make the country worse, who open the borders, who increase crime, who encourage people to live on the sidewalk and do drugs. If there's any lesson of talking to Viktor Orban, maybe it's that. The conversation went on for quite some time. One thing we learned, man, are the efforts to unseat him intense and stealthy. We'll have a lot more on that on Tucker Carlson Originals. We're making that documentary now.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe.
So there you go. And yeah, it is really true what Tucker said. It is a very short, it's kind of not really deep, it's not a super deep closing statement, but I think it is kind of deep in the sense that, that is, I think the reason why the establishment on both sides tries to suppress this discussion, the platforming of Viktor Orban, is because I think if most Americans genuinely heard what he had to say, right, not what the American media has to say about him, but what he had to say on, these issues, you would see them in masses demand a new political class, a better political class. En masse demand better elites, right? Which obviously is a threat to the current elite. So I think that's why you see the kind of suppression of this conversation and the astroturfing, the gaslighting of this conversation that you do. So, all right. Anyways, with that being said, that's about all I had with the Tucker thing. So we'll close out this. But all right, hold on. We're gonna go. I have about like 10 to 15 minutes, and then I have to go do something. I have to go freaking pack for Florida. Okay, imminent. So in that time span, we will read chats or read super chats. I mean, I could talk a little bit more about the Hungary thing, but I want to make sure we get the final kind of Q&A round in the state of California. Very epic before we leave for Florida. So we're gonna kind of cut that bit short and go over to this. Okay, so. There's something I was going to say though. Oh, what I was going to say. Okay, on this topic. All right. Okay, we got Sam Matson. Now his name is Dow's audio was off for 20 minutes. He says, "I haven't forgotten." Okay, let me say for people who weren't here at the beginning of the stream, the 714 hearings. All right, yesterday we did the 714 hearings in front of the committee. Okay, and let me say, I firmly believe I was vindicated, but that's for you to decide for yourself. So we do have video. It's about in total like 40 minutes long. I'll probably split into 2 parts, each 20 minutes. Yesterday we had the 714 hearings, and I'm going to be posting the video of the 714 hearings so you can hear it for yourself all tomorrow. All right. And so that will be available to members. Okay, so we're going to do members only video and that's going to be the 714 hearings. So if you want to see the 714 hearings, all right, you want to witness them, they were very entertaining to say the least. Make sure you get a membership. You could find it. If you're on desktop, you can find it just next to the subscribe button. But also, I have a link in my description if you want to become a member. All right. One of the many perks of becoming a member, you can witness the 714 hearings. Okay. I was basically on trial. It was quite a time. But based Florida mode, so true, so true. I'm not even kidding you. I've been listening to "I Ran So Far Away." I don't know if you guys know that song. It's like an 80s song, but it sounds very Florida. It just sounds very South Florida, actually, as a matter of fact. But also it was like the theme song essentially of GTA Vice City, and it just works. It just fits, and it's just kind of like a double meaning to it because it's kind of like a Florida vibing kind of Florida aesthetic kind of song, but it's also a metaphor because I am running so far away from California. I don't know. To be honest, it's a little bit bittersweet. It is definitely sweet in the sense that we get to get out of California, but also, it's also bittersweet in the sense that it's demoralizing to watch essentially the downfall of the state. I will shill for California a little bit in the sense that it is a beautiful state. It is a naturally beautiful state. It used to be a lot better of a state. It used to be the best state in the country, and I will firmly affirm that is the case. Which is why it's really demoralizing to watch essentially what happened to it. And John Doyle often says, and I agree with him on this. He says that basically the destruction of California was essentially more or less a psyop, right? To just demoralize the average American, to destroy like the very best, right, that America had to offer. Essentially, you hate to see it. I also I'll miss the family. Okay, I'll miss my family. I'll miss my parents and stuff. But other than that, we are excited. It's going to be very epic. It's going to be very epic. Okay, it's definitely going to be very epic. And I will finally be in Eastern time. Okay, I'll finally be in Eastern time, which is, I think is better because that's kind of what most of the country operates in. So Noah Boyd says country roads. I did drive through those actually when we were in Maryland. The drive back to the airport, we did pass through West Virginia. So I've technically been on the country roads. So EST nationalism. No, that is true. One good take from Orange Horseman. One good take. I will grant that. Does that mean you can go back to the O'Hare haircut? I'm probably not going to do that, to be honest. I'm just not going to do that. I don't know. This haircut, I mean, it's kind of long. I got to cut it, but this haircut, we did get a little bit used to this, right? So, instead of sending commies to commie countries, send neocons to commie countries. We could use more based paleocons. I don't know about that. I'm more of yes. We should send Bill Kristol to, Cuba, wherever he hates so much, right? and Bush and Romney and those types of people. But I would also say that I think that a lot of normal neocons can be, awoken. They can be redeemed. They can repent. And so I think I prefer that strategy, because they can form, valuable voters and valuable followers. I don't know. Cairo says, Vince, in a battle of based, who would win, Florida or Texas? I personally prefer Florida. I know some people are more like fans of Texas, but I don't know. Florida reminds me a lot of home in a lot of ways. Florida is not actually, in terms of like layout and structure, is not that different from California. Like, just like California, Florida is a very like suburban state, right? It doesn't really, like, the cities and stuff are kind of sprawled, right? They're kind of more spread out. They're more suburban. And it actually looks very similar to, not in terms of like greenery, but architecture and that stuff. It is a similar state to California. If you took California and made it more humid and Republican, essentially you would get Florida. Texas, on the other, I don't know. Texas is okay. I do have a more favorable opinion now of Texas, simply because I have a lot of friends there and stuff. A lot of people move there. John moved there, Rhett moved there, Elijah moved there. A lot of people moved there, but overall, I don't know. I still personally prefer Florida a little bit more. And that's not just because of who's governor. I think overall, I kind of prefer it a little bit more as a state. The Viet Cong did 714 all the time. Many such cases. The Viet Cong always up to no good. It is just so true. They crawled into the tunnels and they supposedly sabotaged my audio, although they didn't, because, I had perfect audio. So no mountains, though, kind of sad. I mean, I guess if you like the mountains, yeah. I don't know. I have a neutral opinion on mountains. I'm not really like a mountain nationalist or anything. They're just kind of there. Vince, no, I literally didn't, though. I literally said after that it didn't. So you're just lying. Texas has cowboys. I get. Is this it's a girl, that's why. Oh yeah, this is true. I know there's a lot of girls who are into the Cowboys, right? But and not the Dallas Cowboys, but into like your cowboy guys, but All right, Goat says 714 is real. Admit to 714. I don't even care that you're a member. I'm just not going to do that. What's your take on the founders' view of religious freedom? My understanding is that it was the intention of freedom of Christian religion. They wouldn't have allowed things like Satanism. Yeah, this is, I mean, it depends what, it's also important to point out that the founders did not have a totally monolithic view on it, right? You had different founders believe different things. But overall, and we talked about this, I did a stream on this in response to Cam Higbee, right? Because Cam Higbee, the guy from the old conservative hype house, he does this whole video and he mentions me in it about like how America is not a Christian nation and, all this stuff. And I go into it in pretty big detail on my response stream to that, if you want to go watch that. But in short, I think even someone like Jefferson, who was the most liberal founding father, he points out that this whole separation of church and state concept is actually to protect the church from being influenced by the government rather than to protect, the state from being influenced by the church. That was actually the intention. So it is true. And, you have someone like John Adams coming along and saying that the Constitution was only written for a moral and religious people, right? I think it was commonly understood that, yes, while there's technically religious freedom enshrined, it was meant to be a nation of mostly Christian people, right? The founders understood this. The founders lived in this. The founders, by the way, could not even have conceived of any nation that was really different from this. And so, I think that it's important to point out, even that while they didn't intend for America to be a Christian government, they basically undeniably intended for America to be a Christian nation, right? Christian people, because that's ultimately what defines a nation. It's more the people that live in it than the government that governs it. And so, again, if you want to really like get into detail on this, watch my stream, the past stream I did on responding to Cam Higbee. Okay, so you can go take a look at that. All right. Sam Matson says rural Florida has cowboys too. Ironically, no, it does. It does. I actually know one. Actually, I don't know if he technically counts as a real one, but I do. I would say he is. I would say he is. His name's Caleb. Caleb's cool. We love Caleb. Noah Boyd says mountain nationalism. All right, since you sent me $5, I will agree. I will say mountain nationalism as well. Okay. I can't be bought and sold. Sometimes, unless it's 714. Unless not, you could send me $3,000 and I'll still affirm that this from the truth because it's important. Vince, you scared the crap out of me. I thought this was your last stream ever. Imagine thinking I'll ever stop. All right. I will be 90 years old and I'll still be streaming on whatever platform we have by then, if I have not been thrown in jail. No, it is not Caleb Sidener. It is Caleb Lawson. He's cool. Kairos says you once said Blood Upon the Risers was your favorite patriotic song. It's not my favorite, but it is definitely like top three or four for me. You said, so I like to make a cover of it on my channel. Which version of the song do you like the most? The version I like the most is probably this version right here. It's the Vince Speranza. Let me just Google it. Blood on the Risers. Blood on the Leaves. I search for Blood Upon the Risers like every day almost. Stop doing that. My favorite version of the song is this one right here, the Vince Speranza version that's like instrumentalized. This one goes hard. This one's pretty good too, but it's definitely it's the Vince Speranza version. So if you want to cover that, that'd be very epic. We love Blood Upon the Risers. Yeah, I would say. By the way, I would say probably my favorite patriotic song is "Battle Hymn of the Republic." That's my favorite one. Which I mean, they're basically they go to the same tune, right? They're not very different songs from one another exactly, but that's probably my very favorite. Blood Upon the Risers is probably like 2 or 3 for me. It might be 2. I don't know. What other songs are there? The Air Force theme song goes pretty hard too, although we're a little bit disgruntled with the Air Force as of late. But Caleb Lawson might come on the show. We love Caleb Lawson. Actually, Caleb was on my... I don't think anyone would know this. Caleb was back when my very first live stream, I think, ever actually on YouTube. He was on that show. Back when I used to do like that weekly show every Friday, he was actually on that. We love Blood Upon the Risers. So true. No, so true. So true. Vince Dow, thoughts on the infrastructure bill being passed in the Senate? Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. This bill in many ways is essentially like, and I don't even say this because it's cliche, it's just true, right? Because they call everything the Green New Deal except the actual, essentially, Green New Deal light. And that's what you see in a lot of this infrastructure bill, the freaking biometric tracking in the cars. They're piloting a mileage tax, right? They want to put freaking breathalyzers and all this stuff in every single new car. It is ridiculous. It is essentially what this is the Green New Deal light. And what do you get? You get, what is it, 17, 18 Republicans vote for it? Absolutely ridiculous. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. What do Republicans even have to gain from voting from this? Democrats obstructed everything that Trump... because we don't want to look like obstructors. We want to look like we can do things on a bipartisan basis. Yeah, Democrats obstructed basically everything Trump did. And what happened to them? They won the midterms in 2018. It was like a blue wave light. And, that was going with a good economy and all this stuff. Right? It's just mystifying. It is ridiculous. This party, man, the utter state of the GOP, absolutely insane. Now, okay, apparently it was 19. That's even worse. That is ridiculous. You have all this pork barreling through. We hate to see it. American Populist Crusade says you should listen to The Last Stand by Sabaton. I don't know. It's about the Swiss guard saving the Pope in 1527 during a sacking of Rome. It's a pretty epic song. I'll have to take a listen. That sounds pretty epic. Bipartisanship is a code for the swamp. It's just so true. That's all I have to say. It is just literally the case. It is true. Everyone in the chat, look at the yes vote and remember those names. 2023 will be the last year Romney's and others will be in the Senate. So true. 22 said they would vote for it. Only some of them have already voted for it. Okay. Alijan Miz, I'm not even going to say that name, says, how are you doing, host? This guy sounds like he's from another country. I think he is. We love our out-of-country viewers, even though they're like... I think they're like, let me look at my analytics. I'm very interested in that. I remember I was looking at my analytics the other day. I was low key proud of them. I was like, that these are epic. But let me see. I actually got to share the other screen here. It is. My analytics actually kind of crack me up, and I'll show you why once we can pull them up here. All right, analytics. All right, check this out. So, doxed how much money I made on YouTube last month. Not smart, but it's, you know, whatever, not a big deal. Audience, there you go. I wonder, is it here? Yes, it is. Okay, so, so I think a lot of it it doesn't know. So we have 71% from the United States and basically like this much from the rest of the world, which makes sense. But this, I always get a kick out of this part of it though. My audience by gender. YouTube admitted there's only 2 genders. So funny. No, but seriously, 97.2% male. Actually, my female ratio has gone down. It used to be like 3.2%. It's now 2.8%. Okay. So, you know, the channel's a boys club. We always knew it to be the case. I don't think it was ever a mystery, but the boys are literally the 97%. So shout out the 97%ers. And we love the 2.8%ers as well. Okay. Don't get us wrong, but shout out the 97%ers. And shout out to the 2.8% female population too. I'm a chick. We got she's a chick. And we have Kairos is a girl too, right? I mean, I would assume so. I'm pretty sure she is. And we have T-Bone as well. I guess she's a girl as well. So ironically, we have 3% women that watch the channel, and we have 3 girls in chat tonight. So, you know, it is just the natural order of things. It is the natural hierarchy of things. It is the appeal to nature. It is so true. Oh, come on, really? Oh, okay. So probably nerdy ruins it. Now we have 4 girls, and it ruins the perfect ratio. So we have 4 girls watching the stream tonight. Interesting. Star Wars Episode 3 is based, warns about neocons, emergency powers, and staging false flags. I guess. I don't know. It also kind of warns about the weaknesses of democracy as well, but I don't know. Kairos is not a girl. Oh, okay, never mind. So, you know what? The ratio is saved then, when we do literally have 3 girls. Kairos, are you serious? Really? Because it's not just that. It's like your sort of mannerism in the chat. I've just always assumed you were a girl. But okay, I'm sorry about that then. I guess Kairos is a guy. Okay. Noah is a teenager. Yeah. This is, I'm going to actually guess. I'd probably guess that we have more viewership that is 13 to 17, but everyone lies about their age. So probably everyone says they're 18, right? All right, we'll go for a few more minutes here. So send in your last chats, super chats, whatever you want. And memberships as well. Okay, join the memberships, boys, because you don't want to miss the 714 hearings that will be out tomorrow. $223. Wow, you could buy like 2 Big Macs after the infrastructure bill is enacted. Yeah, so true. I'm like rolling in cash here, dude. $200 a month. I mean, you could basically buy a mansion with that money. Bradley says, how do I become a member? So if you're on desktop, it doesn't work on all mobile devices, but if you're on desktop, just go next to the subscribe button. There's a join. But if not, just go down to the link in my description. There's a link where you can join the memberships that way, okay? Like I said, you're not going to want to miss the 714 hearings. You know, big stuff. Some of the biggest we've ever seen, many are saying. So, you know, Vince, you can literally right now go to my channel where I have videos of me talking and singing to the camera. I'm clearly a guy. All right. I'm part of the 2.2. Oh, I put myself as over 65 so I won't get cringe vape ads. That's hilarious. All right. Hold on. What time is it? 7 o'clock. We got a few minutes left here. Yo, let's watch the video and make fun of him. What? Oh, you want to watch Kairos? No, we're not going to bully Kairos. We love Kairos, okay? Vince now keeps thinking men are women. He did it to me, and now he's doing. No, you are a woman. You are a woman. Okay, you are a woman. So I apologize to Kairos. I don't apologize to you. You drink tea, and you prefer tea over coffee. Therefore, you are a woman. There are no exceptions to this rule. There are no exceptions to this rule. It is indeed the case. All right. Would you make a tier list video? I did for 2024 candidates. I'll probably have to do it again because there's been a little bit that has changed. Although I feel like a lot of the 2024 talk is excessive, you know what I mean? And I don't want to engage in it too much because it's just like 2024 this, 2024 that. It's like, dude, it's like 3 years away. Okay. You know, let's be honest. We don't really have any good aspiring. We have two good ones. Okay. Maybe 3, maybe 4 if Tucker gets in the race. Actually, I think Tucker will probably be like a pretty solid candidate, but you know, I'll be honest, I'm a little bit black-pilled on the state of presidential politics overall. So, you know, and that's not to say I wouldn't vote for Trump or DeSantis or whoever it is, but it's just like, I don't know. I don't know if they will be adequate to truly do what needs to be done, you know, like we mentioned on the stream tonight. So I don't know. Well, like, can we just wait? Can we just see where we're at? Like, I don't know if, like, who knows where we'll be at, you know, maybe Ron DeSantis will totally implode. Maybe Donald Trump will go back to 2016 mode and stop being so like boring and dead like he's been the past few months. Who knows? We'll have to see. Okay. But anyways. We love Thompson Spence, Vince Dow 2021. So true. We do. We do. California is overrated. The ocean is pretty. The land is as ugly as Kansas. That is just not the case. What kind of take is this, buddy? That is just not true. It's just not true. It's not true. And also, I would argue that you know, the traditional kind. I'm actually a fan of the traditional kind of layout of California. It's become overcrowded, right? It's become dirty and obviously ran by a bunch of liberal politics, but the original California, you look at how it was in the 50s and 60s and even all the way up to like the 90s and early 2000s. It's like, oh, it's so the utter state of what it's become. It's so sad. It's so sad. So sad. All right. Anyways, guys, with that being said, actually, I'll wrap it up at 7:05. I'll go one more minute. So let's take one more chat here. I have undeniable proof of 714. Check DMs, Red Eagle. I don't even think Red Eagle's in the chat tonight. California is less humid than Florida. No, it is true. It is true. I prefer California's weather overall over Florida's weather, or at least Southern California. Actually, I like northern. I'm actually usually a fan of more like chillier weather. So actually, I would say Northern California has. I really like the weather there. Too bad it's Northern California because, you know, if it weren't, maybe we'd maybe this life would be better. You know, California does not exist. It's a psyop. Okay, buddy. The utter state of the conspiracy theories that come out of Mr. Orange Horseman on a daily basis. Oh, 714. Oh, this. You know, Chandler Crump's the best. We love Chandler Crump. I think he streamed tonight too, didn't he? Shout out Chandler. Make sure you subscribe to Chandler. His channel has gotten like basically borderline nuked by YouTube, but make sure you subscribe to Chandler. And make sure you subscribe to his locals channels because he literally got demonetized. You know, we're still here. We're still standing, but Chandler. So Make sure go subscribe to his local channel and subscribe to my membership while you're at it too. I actually found Vince through Chandler. We love to see it. We love to see it. Vince Dow's height is a psyop. It's meant to distract him. Okay, if it's meant to distract us from 714. It is a psyop. I am not 5'5". I am 5'7". Okay, it is a psyop on Doyle's part, but it is not true that the point of it is to distract us from 714. I've been a Doyleist for over a year. Wasn't sure about you, but tonight you sold me. We love to see it. Thank you very much. But let me just say, okay, if you were a Doyleist, but you were unsure about me, who is a good friend of John, who loves John, and John, he doesn't say it. He doesn't say it. You know, he bullies me publicly, but secretly, you know, he's a friend of mine too. You know, in private, he would never admit this, but you know, we love John. But the fact that you were kind of suspicious of me, even though John is not, it's a little bit sus. But we love to see it. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. But I will say, should have trusted John all along. Okay, in his associations. Okay, because if he associates with me, you know, it is automatically must be true that I am cool too. So, all right. Anyways, guys, with that being said, I gotta go. I got stuff to do. I got to pack. So that'll wrap up the stream tonight. But thank you very much for watching. Shout out to everyone who tuned into the final California stream. We'll be in Florida soon. This will not be the final video in California. We're going to have a few more out. Probably like 2 more out, plus the 714 committee hearings, which again, make sure you're a member on this channel so you can watch them, which will be out tomorrow. But the final stream, I'll see you guys later. The next time we are streaming, we'll be live from the state of Florida. Okay, we will have indeed ran so far away. But until then, guys, God bless. Have a good night. Alpha moves only. And to the state of California, I say one last time, goodbye. All right, see you guys later.